Lieutenant Colonel Layne Barnum, retired Louisiana State Police. Mr. Barnum notified us yesterday that he would not be able to attend.
And then he notified us this morning that he is here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not know. Mr. Barnum is here. Sorry, I apologize. We called Mr. Barnum to come to stand and testify.
Sorry, I sent you that email this morning.
I obviously did not check my email this morning. Mr. Barnum, thank you for being here. If you want to read a testimony, it's up to you. I know you said you had a statement you might want to make. If not, we have questions for the committee. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Barnum, you were the lieutenant colonel over support at the time of the Greene investigation. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were also over the training academy and use of force review. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was your involvement in the Greene investigation, sir?
I didn't have any involvement in the investigation.
Okay. Were you part of the disciplinary review committee for Greene?
For the troopers involved, yes, ma'am.
Okay. You were a part of that review. Who was part of that committee?
Our disciplinary review committee is senior staff.
And senior staff at that time would have been who?
It would have been Colonel Reeves, Colonel Brown, myself, Lieutenant Colonel White, Lieutenant Colonel Oliphant, Lieutenant Colonel Storms.
I'm sorry, White. Who did you say after that? Was that Oliphant?
Yes, ma'am.
Oliphant. Okay. Who else?
Lieutenant Colonel Storms and Miss Fay from Legal.
Faye Morrison.
Yes, ma'am.
What about Doug King?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And when y'all, how often did the review committee meet?
It was it was sporadic. It was based on the submittals from Internal Affairs for cases to be reviewed.
What would be the first time if the Greene in custody death occurred on May 10th, 2019? What would have been the first time, to your recollection, that the committee met?
I don't have a date. It would have been
Just time frame.
I really don't recall the dates.
Okay, would have been a week. Would have been a month. Would have been 2 weeks.
After the there would have been information from Internal Affairs submitted to that committee.
Okay.
So it would have been not after the incident.
Okay. Are we talking about the same year? Or are we talking about the following year? Just give me some idea.
I would be speculating. I'm at a disadvantage with the dates. I don't know the dates that it occurred.
I'm not asking for a date, sir. I'm asking for an approximate time frame, whether it be that year, the next year, the following year. I'm not asking for a date.
I would guess it was a year afterwards.
And when Colonel Reeves was in that meeting, did you see him with his journal taking notes?
Yes, ma'am.
Because that was customary for Colonel Reeves, was it not? Anytime there were staff meetings or committee review meetings, he was taking notes in his journal, was he not?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he ever indicate to you or to your knowledge why he was taking those notes?
No, ma'am.
Who was the lieutenant in fleet at the time of this incident? As I understand, the lieutenant in fleet chaired the accident review board, if that helps your recollection.
Yes, ma'am. That would have been Lieutenant Bill Moran.
Lieutenant Bill Moran. Okay. Mr. Barnum, when did you become aware of the Clary video? Lieutenant Clary's video.
So at one of the senior staff meetings, there was some discussion about information from the case being leaked. As part of that discussion, we looked at the video from the Axon logs, and I'd pull those logs and turn them back over to Colonel Brown and Colonel Reeves.
Okay, so in answer to my question about Lieutenant Clary's video, did you review Lieutenant Clary's video?
I do not recall reviewing Lieutenant Clary's video. No,
when you say you do not recall, does that mean you didn't? Does that mean you don't ever remember seeing it? Or does that mean you don't know if you saw it? What does you do not recall?
I recall getting video logs, access logs, audit logs from several videos. I cannot distinguish between which video was which. In the disciplinary review, I do recall watching some videos, but I cannot distinguish which one is which.
So you don't recall there being any discussion about the Lieutenant Clary video at all? Whether he had a video, whether he didn't, whether it was buried, whether it was mislabeled. You don't recall any discussions about that? And then one day seeing the Lieutenant Clary video?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
As I state, I cannot distinguish between those videos.
Did you see those videos from the evidence.com system, or did you see any videos from a thumb drive?
I saw them from during the presentation in the senior staff meeting.
Do you know whether that was from a thumb drive or the evidence?
No, ma'am.
And you understand the distinction when I say that, in that if it's not viewed on the evidence.com system, then there's not an audit trail of who saw the video?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you don't know how you saw it. You just know
I think it was presented by our Internal Affairs Division at that meeting.
So let me ask you this. Why did you call the lieutenant and fleet who chaired the accident review board and question him as to why he looked at the videos from the Greene incident?
Because when I saw the logs, I saw his name on the log. It seemed unusual. When I went and got the logs, I talked to him and asked him, "Hey, did you get this video?" And he said he did, and he was preparing for his job for the Fleet Review Board.
Why was that unusual? Because as I understand, everybody was claiming that this was a crash fatality. So why would someone who's chairman of the accident review board looking at videos from the incident, why would that strike you as unusual?
Because I did not think he was part of the investigation. At the time, I did not know he was chairing the... I didn't know that particular case was up before the process.
Let me ask you this. What was it that you were investigating? Were you investigating use of force, or were you investigating the vehicle pursuit and the traffic supposed crash fatality?
I wasn't investigating anything, ma'am.
Okay. Now, why did you instruct him to delete the videos from the accident review database?
So there was discussions in that senior staff meeting about information from the cases being leaked. Is my understanding there was multiple investigations going on, and to protect the integrity of the information.
And who instructed you to do that?
It was brought up at a senior staff meeting. I confirmed it with Colonel Brown and Colonel Reeves.
So brought up at a senior staff meeting. So does that mean Colonel Reeves and Major Brown instructed you to call the lieutenant and fleet and have him delete it?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm not following the question.
So
There was
who
never instruction
instructed
to
you?
delete it. I asked him not to save it on the shared drive, which multiple people had access to.
Okay, my question to you was, why did you instruct him to delete the videos? And then you explained to me to protect the integrity of the information.
And I explained to him that we weren't going to stop his board from proceeding, but that after they had did their piece of the board, it would be submitted up their chain of command as normal process, and not to save it because information from the case had been leaking, and it was a working copy. It
So
wasn't
again,
on the Axon.
my question is, who instructed you to instruct the lieutenant in fleet, who was the chairman of the accident review board, to delete the videos from the database?
That would have been myself.
Okay. So you decided on your own without anyone suggesting to you that that would be necessary. You decided on your own to have him do that.
It was discussed in our senior staff meeting that the information needed to be protected.
Okay.
The evidence, the original evidence, is the Axon system.
Okay.
Storing it in different locations it lends itself not to be protected.
Gotcha. So what about DeMoss's video, body camera video? Did you request access to review that video?
I requested that all the videos from the incident be locked.
Okay. Logged. So
Locked.
locked. Locked. Did you request to review the DeMoss video?
I do not recall requesting to review any videos other than seeing them at the Disciplinary Review Committee.
Well, let me see if I can help you remember that you requested to review that video and you were given access and then that access was quickly revoked. Does that help you remember anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So if my information, if what I just said is correct, you don't recall your access being revoked and then you wouldn't know why your access was revoked?
No, ma'am.
Now, did you believe Greene's death was a result of a vehicle crash?
I did not know. I was not part of that investigation.
Okay. Well, based on your position with the state police, would you find it unusual to have an in-custody death purportedly from a fatality crash and not have a reconstruction of the scene or photos or a crash diagram or the vehicle CDR? Would all of that strike you odd based upon your experience?
It's my understanding that any in-custody death would result in a full criminal investigation. So some of the things you just mentioned, I would expect that those would have been at least reviewed, considered, and done if appropriate.
And unusual if they don't exist, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Representative Bilio. I want to follow up on some of the questions you asked. In the staff meeting, you said it was discussed in the staff meeting. Who brought up the discussion in the staff meeting?
The discussion was initiated regarding there being information leaks on the case. I believe it was by Colonel Reeves.
Okay. So Colonel Reeves brought up the discussion, hey, we have a leak. Is that kind of what happened?
Yes, sir.
And then there was a discussion. I'm sure the follow-up was, well, how do we handle the leak, right?
The discussion was how do we protect the integrity of the information in the case.
Right. I think we're saying the same thing, just different semantics. And what was the outcome of that discussion? What was the final resolution of how you're going to handle the integrity of the information?
That we were going to look at the logs when I noticed the videos were not locked. We had a discussion about that, and it was a decision was made to lock the cases.
Okay. So that meeting...
In
sorry. Go ahead.
Axon, the date, there should be a complete log of when that was done and when those were locked.
Then, let's go back to something else you said. You said you then... So nobody told you go out there and make sure it's not on the shared drive. Nobody said that in the meeting?
No, sir.
And you just decided you need to do that on your own?
When I discussed it with Lieutenant Marana, they had been in the past storing working copies of videos, and I told him we didn't need to be storing this one there. It was multiple investigations going on.
Right, but the video was on the S drive at this point.
You know what? I do not know for sure if it was or wasn't, but I asked him not to store it there.
Okay. I mean, I think not to store it there is sort of the same thing as if it's there, delete it.
Yes, sir.
And
just for a point of clarification, we're asking to delete a working copy of something that the official evidence is the Axon.
Sure, I understand.
Yes, sir.
And did you explain to Lieutenant Moran why you were making this request?
I did. I told him there was active investigations and it needed to be protected.
Okay. Representative Bacala.
Thank you. Lieutenant Colonel Barnum, you mentioned senior staff meetings, and I think you did kind of review who participated, but would you tell me again on a how often were senior staff meetings held?
We normally had senior staff meetings every Monday.
Okay, and who typically would be a participant in the senior staff meetings?
The colonel, the chief of staff, the lieutenant colonels, and legal, and we would also have briefings from CID or even public affairs from time to time, or any other matter that needed to be presented to the senior staff.
Okay, just and if you would you said colonels, lieutenant colonels. Could you actually give me a list of names of who would typically be involved in those meetings?
So the last account of senior staff when I was there was Colonel Davis, but before that was Colonel Reeves, Colonel Brown, Colonel White, Colonel Oliphant, myself, Colonel Starnes, Office of Legal Affairs, Miss Faye Morrison.
Okay, and so every Monday you guys would gather to, if you would, just kind of describe a typical meeting.
We would just go around the room and bring up issues that needed to be discussed or addressed, situational awareness.
Okay, and could you give me some examples of what that might have been?
From my side, it was condition of cars, equipment, guns, training.
Okay.
And then each section staff would have an opportunity to address issues.
Okay, and in regards, because this is relative to the Ronald Greene investigation, within the senior staff, who would have been the individual who, if there had been briefings, who would have done the briefing on that?
Sometimes the captain or the major from CID would come in and do those briefings.
All right, so, and who would that captain from CID or who would they report to? Who would be their senior staff member within the meeting?
The senior staff of investigations was Colonel White. The senior staff of Lieutenant Colonel of Patrol was Colonel Oliphant.
All right, and would you say that you attended all of the meetings, most of the meetings?
Every time I was there, I would have.
So if you weren't on vacation or something, you were in the meeting. How often? That's often may be the wrong word, but how many times was Ronald Greene's case mentioned in some form or fashion during those meetings?
I don't ever recall there being a briefing on the Ronald Greene case other than when we got to disciplinary review.
And when did you get to disciplinary review?
And that's what I was explaining earlier. I'm at a loss with the time on that. I do not remember the
that's
dates
when you.
of that.
So that year that we referred to, about a year later, that time frame. That's when you guys would have been. That's when you would have discussed in the senior staff meeting, and you don't recall any other discussion in that 1 year time frame?
I do not know, sir.
What would you, looking back, what would you infer from the fact that there was never a briefing on the Ronald Greene case?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, would your inference be it was? I'm saying looking back. So I'm not asking you to think what you would have thought at the time.
Yes, sir.
But looking back, would you have made the assumption that there was nothing to report?
That it was being investigated and handled by CID and coordination with the district attorney's office is what I would assume.
Would you find it? Would you not find it unusual that no one asked in a senior staff meeting for updates on the Ronald Greene investigation if it was an active investigation?
We didn't cover all investigations, and frankly, I don't even know when I became aware there was an investigation. It wasn't up till around the time there were some leaks and some discussions on the.
So apparently, it became Ronald Greene incident investigation really didn't get any attention in senior staff meetings until there was a leak.
I do not recall any discussions about Ronald Greene.
Until there was a leak?
Yes, sir. That's when I first recall having the discussions about it. They could have been discussing a case. I didn't know names on cases.
Okay, so if it was discussed, it didn't something that you recall, one way or the other. I mean, this wasn't part of your oversight.
Yes, sir, and it wasn't something that raised to the level where,
Do you recall other investigations that were discussed in great detail, or no detail? Was it typical that you guys would discuss disciplinary matters or criminal investigations within those meetings?
I don't recall us getting down really into the details of cases. The briefings were brief at best. That chain of command would have known the details of the cases.
But they wouldn't have been shared typically. I mean, nobody ever said what's going on with this case or that case, or what can you tell me? Can you give me an update on?
Not that I recall, and I do not remember cases being discussed in depth at staff meetings.
Do you recall cases being discussed in staff meetings, even if they weren't in depth? I'm just trying to get a feel for it. I'm not trying to cross-examine you here. I'm just trying to get a feel for what a staff meeting would have looked like.
Yes, sir, and I'm trying to give my account for there was discussions on cases, status of cases. A lot of times it was new cases that had just arrived. Hey, there was an officer-involved shooting here, such and such teams working, that type of deal.
Okay, now let's go back. You were part of the disciplinary review process, right?
Yes, sir.
At what point, we have, I guess, concurrent criminal investigation that's in disciplinary investigations going on, or internal investigations, violation of policy and violation of law, taking two different tracks, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was there an internal investigation initiated in this case?
Yes, sir.
When was that investigation initiated?
I do not know the dates on that, but it was later. Late. I won't say late, but she asked me earlier, Representative did, like a year later, it seemed like.
So there was no internal investigation authorized, launched, or whatever for a year?
Typically, the criminal cases run before the internal affairs cases.
Is that by policy? I mean, why do you allow? This is not a question for you, but is it the norm that an internal affairs case is put on hold while a criminal investigation is ongoing?
That's been my experience over the years, yes, sir.
Okay, I guess we could. I have an opinion about that, and I would ask if you share my opinion, which is that the two are independent. And investigating a case for a legal violation is different than investigating a case for a policy violation. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Different standards.
Yes, sir.
And the fact that they should have been going on concurrently, that there really shouldn't be this is my opinion, I'm only stating, and I hope you will share yours. My opinion is that you should not have to wait to review policy violations until criminal violations are cleared.
Yes, sir. And there, nationwide there is discussions, better practices. That is one of the things that had been discussed in the past, is when could we start internal affairs cases and not, interrupt or potentially damage the criminal case.
When did y'all have those discussions? During the Greene aftermath? Before that? Has this been going on for years? When should you start? Philosophically?
I don't know if that was before or after.
All right. Okay, I may come back to some more questions, but
Yes,
I'll let somebody else have the mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. You do receive, as in your position, the public safety services from Colonel Reeves, right? The monthly report.
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, sir.
It's a document. It's called Louisiana Department of Public Safety Public Safety Services monthly report. You received that in your position, didn't you?
I do not recall that. I'd have to see what you're.
Here, I'll hold it up
referring
for
to.
you so you can see what it looks like. There's the front page of it. You received this document? Here, y'all can, would y'all mind handing it to him? I don't mind. I'm not trying to trick you. I just want to make sure you got what you were supposed to get. It appears to me to be a monthly report that was given to senior staff.
I've seen a report like this. I don't recall getting it regularly, but it looks familiar.
You were emailed a copy of it on that one on April 8th, 2020.
Okay.
And from this just documents the state police have produced, and it says, we've attached a monthly report from Public Safety Services on behalf of Colonel Reeves. The reason why I ask you that is because the report itself, and you can look on the back page of it, it talks about officer-involved shootings and stuff like that. I guess I'm trying to understand, did you just not review these reports, or it seems like the Ronald Greene matter should have been in these reports at some point?
If you're saying I got emailed that, then obviously I did. I do not recall specifically. I've seen reports like this before.
I mean, Ronald Greene's not in this particular one, but I'm just wondering, it seems like these things happen, and y'all do a monthly report of it, and I'm trying to square that with the testimony that you didn't really hear anything about this.
If there was one in there, sir, that circulated, I got it. I don't want to say that I read every single word on that every time. I would be looking for the things that were relevant to me and my position.
I understand. I'm going to turn it over to Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Barnum, again, you were over use of force review, correct?
The use of force review was tasked out to the training division. Yes, ma'am.
So getting back to Representative Bacala, let's just say hypothetically, an officer, and I'll try to be not polite, but careful with my wording. An officer beats the snot out of an arrestee. You're telling me that it was state police's practice to allow that officer to continue working, not do any disciplinary proceedings until such time as there's been a decision outside of state police on criminal charges?
I would ask you to repeat that question, and I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. My question is, if an officer
Yes, ma'am.
uses
I got
excessive force and there is a criminal charge review, that officer is going to be allowed to come to work every day and interact with the public, notwithstanding knowledge that he has used excessive force,
I see. Yes.
until such time as the criminal charge review is over and then the state police conducts disciplinary proceedings.
I think in the initial phases of that criminal investigation, if there was indications that there were issues, there could have and should have been discussions about placing an officer on administrative leave.
Okay? So if you're over use of force review, and in August 2019, just several months after Mr. Greene's death, there was discussions with the DA and the DA was going to turn information over to the U.S. Attorney's Office to consider criminal charges. You would not have been aware of that?
I was not aware of that at the time, no, ma'am.
My last question to you, Mr. Barnum, have you ever asked anyone else, or lieutenant in fleet, chairman of the Accident Review Board, at any time, have you ever asked anyone at any time other than in this one instance to delete videos?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Representative Bacala.
Thank you. Lieutenant Colonel, at one time you were you were assigned to internal affairs, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think, was that the position you held immediately prior to disciplinary review?
Yes, sir.
And when did you when were you promoted to disciplinary review from IA?
So I was promoted to lieutenant colonel of support. One of the functions is to sit on the disciplinary review
Okay.
committee with all.
Okay, when did you leave IA?
I got promoted January of 2018.
Okay, so in January, prior to January 2018, you were internal affairs. If and again, I'm asking you just kind of place this case into the time frame where you were with IA. If you had seen the videos that you saw after 28 in the Ronald Greene videos, while you were part of the internal affairs unit, would you, knowing everything you know now, because you'd have known it then, all right? So if you had all the facts and circumstances available at your hands and you're part of internal affairs investigation, looking at the facts that you know today, would you have found that this case warranted disciplinary action?
In my opinion, would have warranted discussions of consideration on placing officers on admin leave until such time that the criminal and administrative cases could have been worked.
So you're saying that let's put all these people on leave till we finish the criminal investigation?
You know, that is an option, yes, sir. I'm not saying that would be an automatic option. I'm saying that would be up for discussion regarding the people responsible for doing the investigations, both IA and.
And when you say up for discussion, I mean, you're talking about like, okay, let's run it up the chain, that kind of discussion?
Yeah, we would discuss it in a senior staff meeting.
All right, so that would have been something you'd have said, okay, this IA warrants senior staff discussion. You'd have brought it before senior staff, and the decision would have been made about what action should have been taken.
Yes, sir.
That's that. Okay. The internal affairs, with this investigation, even though that may have been the typical operating procedure, that didn't happen with Ronald Greene, to your recollection. It never came up the chain. It never was IA coming in and said, we need to discuss this.
I do not recall that, no, sir.
Okay. Certainly, you know, I think great deference would have been given to the opinions of the internal affairs investigators, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And as a former internal affairs investigator, you would have brought this case to senior staff or made sure that it had gone to senior staff? Is my overstating that?
Yes, whenever I would have seen it. But there was a criminal case running. At what point in time?
Well, did IA automatically say, okay, we know there's a criminal case, so we're not going to do anything, or would that be a senior staff decision?
That would be a senior staff decision.
If IA was aware of the case and was also aware that there's maybe a criminal investigation, that would have gone to senior staff meetings, and that's where a decision would have been made as per the processes and procedures when you were in IA.
Yes, sir.
Can you, and again, I know it's your recollection, so maybe somebody will come back and say we did talk about it in a senior staff meeting, even though we've asked similar questions and it seems that there never was a discussion in senior staff. Do you find, why do you think there never would have been a discussion in senior staff meetings? Why would I not have ever brought this? You think it would have been because decisions were made outside of the IA meeting, or it just was not on anybody's radar?
I don't know, sir.
Okay, that'd be speculation on your part. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Marcel.
Thank you. Sorry I missed a lot of your testimony, so I hope I'm not being redundant. I had a committee next door. you are currently retired. Is that accurate? When did you retire?
I retired. My last work day was April 30th of last year.
Last year. Were you on the drop, or you just scheduled to retire? You got another job, or what happened?
So I had my time in. I had some prior military service that I purchased, and
I guess I'm asking, when did you make the decision to retire?
I've been thinking about retirement for the past 10 years.
I've been thinking about it too. I've been thinking about it for about 10.
But I still work.
Yes. Okay, so you're working now.
Yes, ma'am.
So you left there, and where are you currently working?
I'm teaching.
You're teaching. Okay. So you were the IA investigator when you left, but not doing
I was a lieutenant colonel over support division.
support division. Okay. And what did that division do?
It is the command of all the support elements other than patrol and investigations. So criminal records, crime lab, training, DPS police, Capitol security.
So the criminal records. Would you have been over the body cameras?
Yes, ma'am.
You were. So during this investigation, well, after Ronald Greene was killed, you would have had knowledge of who was viewing those body camera footages and who were not?
So previously I was asked and I explained to...
I'm sorry, I wasn't in
Yes,
here. I'm so
ma'am.
sorry.
So at some point in time, I don't remember the dates, but there was a discussion about case information being leaked out. I went and got the audit logs from
So who was that discussion with? When they said the
Senior.
case information
senior staff.
specifically?
Colonel Reeves, Colonel Brown,
Colonel
Colonel
Reeves,
White, Colonel Oliphant, myself.
Brown. And so they were concerned that the information was being leaked out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so go ahead. Tell me what happened.
So I got the particularly the one of the body cams or one of the videos. I got the audit logs. We looked at those. The videos were not locked, and as part of that discussion, we locked the videos.
Okay, so you have no information on who was leaking information. They didn't tell you that. They just said information is being leaked. We need you to lock them.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so that would be why someone who was over use of force, was his name Scott? That would be why he would have said that he could not access the video anymore without permission.
Yeah, if the videos are locked, it would require a specific request and a specific permission to grant that.
Even though he was investigating the use of force, it was still locked for him. Who wasn't it locked for?
I don't know, ma'am. I'd have to look at the logs.
Okay,
to see.
so would it have just been senior staff that could have gotten into it
I think
without?
internal affairs. There was a couple of global administrators that would be able to grant access.
Okay. So, and one final question, because I don't want to be redundant, and I'm not sure what they actually. I did hear you say the IA investigation. I've heard others come to this table say the IA investigation was going along with the criminal investigation, so that would have caused y'all to stop the IA investigation.
It's my understanding that the IA investigation started later.
Started after the criminal investigation.
Ma'am, not concurrent, as Representative Bacalov asked me about.
Okay, so do you know when the IA investigation? You
No,
were
ma'am.
gone when that
I was
started.
not in internal affairs, but
Oh.
there should be IA records
Okay.
from that IA case system to show the dates.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. I just have a follow-up, though. I think we talked about the videos, but you also locked up the crash report. Is that correct?
I did, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the crash reports are typically public accessible.
Yes, sir. Well, they're for sale to the public.
Right, accessible. That's
If-
why I use the word accessible.
If you're involved in that crash type of deal or insurance company.
Right. But anybody can go onto the website, state police's website, pay like the $30 or whatever the fee is.
It's my understanding you have to know locations, names enough to put in to show that you were involved in the the case.
Yeah, you have to know the date is really what you need to know, and the parish it happened at. So, what was the? Do you normally lock up the crash report as well when there's an IA or criminal investigation? Is that standard?
It was part of the discussion of information that was potentially leaked, of what else could be leaked type of deal while there was ongoing investigations.
I guess my question though is, if something is accessible to the public, it's not leaked. I mean, anybody who knows the date and time can. Sure, one second, Representative Baclaw. Hold on. Yeah, go ahead, Representative.
I think that statutorily, it's not accessible to the public. It's if you're a party to the accident, and that could be a party, could be someone who's involved, the owner of the car, whoever. It's not accessible to anyone, so it's not a complete public record. And I think that was enacted years ago to keep ambulance chasers from grabbing all the reports and trying to,
No, I do it all the time. In my practice of law, you literally go, you know the date and time, and nobody controls it. You can just click the parish, the date, hit download, pay $30 with your credit card, and then it gives you the report. I can do it for any case I want. I do it all the time.
All right.
So this information is really already quite available to the public. So I guess I'm struggling with the word leaked around a crash report, unless it's the operating procedure that if it's involved in a criminal investigation, that y'all automatically don't provide that report online.
It was my understanding it was part of this investigation, and as subsequent, we locked it.
Right, and I understand that. But I guess my question is, and this is something that's really starting to kind of wear at me, is what are the procedures of state police? Every time we ask y'all a question about procedures, it's like, well, my understanding this time, that time, in this case we did this. The idea, as my understanding of procedures, is to have a manual that you refer to on how you handle circumstances. That if you do it by the manual, you're doing it, quote unquote, by the book. And we do it, quote unquote, by the book, it alleviates a lot of these questions that we're having now, because you say, I was doing what we do at state police when we do this. These are our procedures. I was following those things. What's happened, what appears to me, and I could be wrong, and I'm trying to find out, is that y'all are literally have like a committee to decide how you're going to do every action and not following any procedures y'all are. And they may exist, and I think they do, but y'all are just you're either ignoring it or you're not enacting it. And I can't figure out which one y'all are doing, and nobody seems to have a working knowledge of the procedures themselves. So my question is, what are the procedures as it relates to a crash report when there's either an IA investigation or a criminal investigation? As a guy who used to be an IA, who can have the authority to call somebody and say, hey, take that off the shared drive, I really feel like you should know that. So can you answer for me, what was the procedure at state police revolving around crash reports if it's related to an accident, related to a criminal or IA investigation? That's my question.
Yes, sir. I am not aware of a specific procedure regarding that. But I can tell you that, and I had the privilege of working with Colonel Davis, we worked tirelessly to institute best practices, guidelines, and try to do our best. And I know, I hear what you're saying, and our agency does a really good job overall. Are there things that we could do better? Certainly. Is there people still trying to make us better? Certainly.
And look, I understand it completely. I'm not trying to drag anybody to the coals. I've said it many times in committee. I have a great admiration and respect for the troopers and all they do. I'm often overwhelmed by the work that they do and the commitment they have to public safety. It's concerning to me, though, that this seems sort of basic, though. IA, criminal report, we have a crash report. How do we handle that crash report? Especially since it's on a public website, accessible, it seems like there should be, when I go click on that crash report as the attorney involved, it would say, this is under investigation, not accessible to the public at this time. It seems like there shouldn't even be that category. If that's your procedure, then it'd be more concerning to me as a member of the public if I know about a crash, I go to get that file and it's just missing with no reason why it's missing. You understand why that would make the public feel like something's been deleted?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. I mean, that's all the questions I have. Is there any other questions for the committee, from the committee? All right. Thank you, Mr. Barnum. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.